because we're growing up now, y'all. We the millennials, and stop doing stupid shit. Stop being a little kid. Stop trying to get out of jury duty and sit on that damn jury and do your job. I really wanted to talk about this Carmelo Anthony case, and I've been really busy, so I just want to jump right in. So just a little background. On April 2nd, 2025, students from multiple schools were attending a track meet in Frisco, Texas. During a rain delay, Carmelo Anthony, a student from Centennial High School, ended up under a tent associated with Memorial High School. A confrontation occurred between Anthony and Austin Metcalf, right? Carmelo Anthony is a young black boy. Austin Metcalf is a young white boy. And Austin Metcalf was a Memorial High School student. During that confrontation, Anthony stabbed Metcalf once in the chest, and Metcalf, the white boy, died from the wound. Anthony admitted that he stabbed Metcalf, but claimed he acted in self-defense. Texas prosecutors charged Anthony with murder. The prosecution's theory was basically that Anthony was asked to leave the area. A verbal confrontation occurred. Anthony escalated the encounter by using deadly force. The stabbing was not legally justified as a self-defense, right? The defense's theory was that Anthony was physically smaller than Metcalf. He felt threatened during the confrontation, and he made a split-second decision while in fear, and the stabbing was legally justified under self-defense. The trial was never really about whether Anthony stabbed Metcalf. That fact was never disputed. The central question was whether the stabbing was legally justified, right, under self-defense. What evidence the jury ended up hearing? The jury heard eyewitness testimony from students, testimony from coaches and first responders, video footage of the incident area, evidence regarding the knife use, testimony about what occurred immediately before the stabbing, and competing accounts about whether Anthony was acting out of fear or aggression. And the prosecution argued the evidence showed an unjustified killing, and the defense argued that the evidence showed a teenager that was just reacting to a perceived threat. The verdict came in on June 9th, right, 2026, and the jury found Anthony guilty of murder, and the same jury, right, sentenced him to 35 years in prison. What the fuck, right? Anyway, the jury selection issue. So Anthony is black. Remember, Carmelo Anthony is black. Metcalf was white. During the jury selection, the prosecution used peremptory strikes against the remaining black prospective jurors. Okay, so now let me just give you a quick little lesson on peremptory challenges, and I'm going to introduce you to a case, Batson v. Kentucky, which is the whole reason I made this video. So when lawyers pick a jury, there are two ways that jurors can be removed. So first, we're going to have our challenges for cause. That's when the juror says something that shows they may not be able to be fair and impartial, right? For example, someone says, oh, I can never believe a police officer would lie, or I can never vote not guilty. They can be removed, right? But then there are what we call peremptory challenges, right? You might see somebody say peremptory strikes. And peremptory challenges allow lawyers to remove a potential juror without proving that person is biased. Each side is going to get a limited number of those strikes. It could be different in different jurisdictions, right? So now this sounds really simple, right? Well, for years, these strikes were used to systematically remove black people from juries, right? Yeah, we're coming around to why this is important in this Carmelo Anthony case. Now, that's where the case I was telling you about, Batson v. Kentucky, comes in. In 1986, the United States Supreme Court said lawyers cannot use peremptory challenges to exclude jurors simply because they're black, right? Based off their race. So today, if one side believes jurors are being removed because of race, they can raise what's called a Batson challenge and force the other side to explain why those jurors were struck. Here's the problem. The lawyer doesn't have to admit that race was the reason. They can give a race neutral explanation like, oh yeah, she's a teacher, right? Or he had a bad experience with law enforcement. Or, oh, I just didn't like his answers, whatever. Then the judge has to decide. Now, remember, come back around. We just had judicial elections, right? That's why it's important who you put in office. Now, the judge then has to decide whether that reason is legitimate or just a cover for discrimination, right? And that's why Batson remains one of the most important and most controversial protections in our criminal justice system, because the question isn't just who gets to serve on a jury. The question is whether every community gets a fair chance to be represented when justice is being decided. Now, back to this Anthony case. Like I was saying, During jury selection, the prosecution used peremptory strikes against the remaining Black prospective jurors, right? Defense counsel objected and they raised a Batson challenge, arguing the strikes were racially motivated. Prosecutors responded that the jurors were removed because they were teachers, not because they were Black. The trial judge accepted the prosecution's explanation and denied the Batson challenge. The trial judge accepted the prosecution's explanation and denied the Batson challenge. This is why judges are important. Who we put in office matters, right? Right. And jurors. So, the trial judge accepted this, denied the Batson challenge. The result was a jury with no Black jurors seated. What? So now let's get to why I initially just wanted to have this conversation, right? When I first saw the case going right to trial and I saw that an all-white jury was picked, I said, hey, something ain't right here. There's a reason this is happening right now, okay? Right? Just stay with me. To my mind immediately. It immediately went somewhere that most people just weren't talking about, right? And that's Batson. And why does that matter? Because for generations, Black people were systematically excluded from juries, correct? We know that. Not by accident, not because they weren't qualified. However, because people believe that Black jurors would be more sympathetic to Black defendants, or would challenge systems that had historically harmed Black communities. Baby, they had pre-thought of this when they created this system, right? Remember, I'm doing a whole little design, how this system was designed, why it was designed. This was the thought process. This was the purpose, right? They thought about every single thing, from over policing to get you in the system to making sure that you, even if you try to challenge it in any type of way, they be able to stop you. And that's why you're important, right? That's why jurors of color are important, particularly Black jurors. And a lot of times we'll see, right? Black jurors try to get off. They don't want to sit on. They don't have time. Maybe they don't have the funds. Maybe they can't afford to take off that long, right? They don't have childcare for that long, whatever. You know, they got strict times or whatever. And sometimes you can let the court know these different things and they can help you make concessions. But if they're not, they don't want you on there anyway. It's like, oh, well, oh, you just can't do it. Okay, you're excluded. Okay. We'll come back to that because we're growing up now, y'all. We the millennials, and stop doing stupid shit. Stop being a little kid. Stop trying to get out of jury duty and sit on that damn jury and do your job. If you care about the community, do your part. Do your part. Even if you don't care about all the community, you care about your cousin and them, right? You know about good karma. You better put that shit into the air and stop playing games. Because it may very well be your ass sitting up there needing a juror to sit there and hear from you and be able to go back in the back with them other people who know nothing about your lived experience and know nothing about you and fight for you. Stop trying to get off of jury duty. Ugh. Now, back to what I was saying. Batson was supposed to be a safeguard against all of that, right? Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It hasn't been difficult to enforce. Yes, absolutely. But it has at least given lawyers a tool to challenge racial discrimination during jury selection, right? And now I want y'all to take just a minute and think about what's going on in America right now. Okay? I want you to take a minute to think about what's going on in America right now. All right? Come, we here? Let's talk. We're watching attacks on voting rights. We're watching affirmative action overturned, right? And we're watching courts increasingly question policies designed to address historic discrimination. That's what we're all seeing in real time, are we not? And many legal advocates have been warning that jury selection may be the next battlefield. That is why this case concerns me. Because what just happened has been going on for decades. My bad, centuries. Right? Years upon years, hundreds of years. This is what this system was created to do. And I'm glad that it's on a national stage at this moment and people are paying attention and saying, this is what this system is created to do. Right? That's how it started. And then there were cases that created protections, you know, like I'm talking about Batson, and that didn't come to 1986. I was born in 1986. I'll be 40 this year. So that's 40 years old. Whoop-de-doo, right? That's why this case concerns me, not because of who wins or loses politically, Not because of whether people are agreeing about these underlying facts, but because if Batson is weakened or eventually dismantled, the consequences will extend far beyond this case. It will affect every future person who is charged with anything, every future jury, every future family sitting in a courtroom hoping that the jury deciding their loved one's fate reflects the community and not just one segment of it. Hello? This is why this matters. 97% of people take pleas because they're scared to go to trial, because they don't think they can get a fair trial. And that's with protection supposedly in place. What you think gonna happen if lawyers have no ability to challenge racial discrimination in juror selection? Just happen in public. So of course it's gonna embolden the horrible judges that are out there who think that's fair, who want that. It's gonna embolden them, right? The people who should be paying attention to this are not just lawyers, y'all. It is parents, it is community leaders, it is voters. If anyone who believes that justice works best when juries are truly representative, because once protections disappear, getting them back is a whole lot harder. And history teaches us something important. Rights are rarely lost all at once. We've been seeing that happen, right? They're usually weakened piece by piece until people finally realize what happened. So while everybody else is arguing about this particular case or, outraged about it at this moment, I'm paying attention to the legal principles underneath it, because those principles will be here long after this case is over. If you're wondering how, at this point, clearly, I'm sure this man is going to appeal. He's going to appeal his case. And when he appeals, he's going to raise that challenge. He's going to raise that it was denied by the judge. And ultimately, right, if it gets to the Supreme Court, which that's where it's going, after it's exhausted in state and either side doesn't like what the outcome is, they're going to appeal it. And then finally, the Supreme Court is going to be able to, I've been waiting on this one. Let's roll this one back too. And then guess what? That 97% of people who take pleas skyrockets. Mass incarceration, Black Americans being 6 times more incarcerated, skyrockets. And so now they have everything that they want. They have brown people in detention camps where they are doing all types of horrible, unspeakable things to them, and nobody gives a damn. And then they're going to have Black people incarcerated where they believe we belong. So the Carmelo Anthony case, y'all drop your comments. What are your thoughts on all of this? Did you know any of this? And what are your thoughts now?